And so I think that this is somewhere closer to the nature of that enmity that Elohim declared. Because this is what Paul says in 1 Timothy 2. And listen carefully to this. It was Adam who was first created, and then Eve. And it was not Adam who was deceived, but the woman being deceived or seduced. That word is actually a different word than the word used where it says that Adam was not deceived. It says the woman was deceived, a different word. She was seduced and fell into transgression. But it says she will be preserved, saved or delivered, through the bearing of children. And I wanted to bring this because this verse has come out in some of our previous studies, and I wasn't able to give a real good explanation of this, but I think I've been able to perceive something that's being said in this verse that might help us to understand what Paul's talking about here. Because he says, first of all, he says, the word woman here isn't in this sentence. He says, but he or she, we always translate it she will be preserved through the bearing of children. But it could also be he will be preserved through the bearing of children. And maybe the reason he uses the word saved or delivered here is because we're talking about salvation, a salvation issue. It's not that the bearing of children is bringing about salvation for the man or the woman, but that the human race would be preserved or saved through the bearing of children. And so it says he or she will be preserved, saved, delivered. The human race will be preserved through the bearing of children if they continue in faith, love, and holiness with self-constraint. And so it's not that she has to continue in faith, love, and sanctity, but the two of them together, the man and the woman, are to continue in faith, love, and sanctity. And in the process of that, through the bearing of godly children, the human race will be preserved. Okay, so now for me, this takes on a whole different understanding of what Paul's saying here. He's not talking about the woman's going to be saved in childbirth. He's talking about the human race is going to be preserved through the bearing and the reproduction of the race as they have offspring, if they continue in that relationship with the living Elohim. In other words, if they continue in that faith and that right relationship and produce godly offspring as they are supposed to do, the human race will be saved or preserved. And that's exactly what Elohim intended for the male and the female when he created them, was the preservation and the propagation of the human race through godly offspring.
Hallelujah.
Hallelujah.
Sorry.
So,
Can you explain again about she, but woman?
yeah, the verb here, will be preserved. The form of it can be masculine or feminine. In other words, it doesn't have a gender attached to it. It doesn't say the woman will be preserved or the man will be preserved, but it says and it, using a generic form. It's just the verb itself. It will be preserved, meaning he or she. It could be he or she. But I think what it's saying is he, the human race, not the woman particularly, but he will be preserved through the bearing of children. Adam, yeah, the mankind will be preserved, saved, or delivered through the bearing of children if they continue, if the two of them continue and raise up godly offspring. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So the word woman isn't really there, although many of the English translations, most of them, put the word woman in there. But it's not there, and it's important to look at exactly what the Greek text says so that we're not thrown off by an English Bible translation into thinking it's saying something else, because it wasn't saying what we thought it was saying. And so this is the insight I'm offering. You can look at it for yourself and meditate on it and decide whether or not this is making better sense of what Paul is addressing here in 1 Timothy chapter 2.